Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to solve the broker machine in HackTheBox. So we will start with the Nmap scanning. So we found that 2280 and more are out of ports there, and we can perform version detection and with default script. So nmap port 8. And then default script version detection. So I would like to check this information further. So port 22, it is running Ubuntu, and then port 80, 22 is OpenSSH, and Ubuntu, it says like basic realm equals to ActiveMQ realm. It appears that this machine looks to be related to ActiveMQ and MQTT and 613 Apache ActiveMQ, and this looks to be ActiveMQ OpenWire transport, and it says like provider version is 5.15.15. And if I try to go to this website, I think I the target address is this. It gives me this. So even if I call this, it gives me 401 unauthorized message. So at this stage we can focus on the ActiveMQ 5 point vulnerability. It says there is vulnerability CVE like this, and before this I want to know what ActiveMQ is. So Apache ActiveMQ is the most popular open source multi-protocol Java-based message broker. It supports industry standard protocols so users get the benefits of client choices across a broad range of languages and platforms. So it appears to be the message broker. So and we can look for this. So Apache ActiveMQ before 5.15 point. So our version looks to be applied, and the Java OpenWire protocol marshaller is vulnerable to remote code execution. Users are and this vulnerability may allow remote attacker with network access to either a Java-based OpenWire broker or client to run arbitrary shell commands by manipulating serialized class types in the OpenWire protocol to cause either the client or the broker to instantiate any class on the class path. And so at this stage we can use this vulnerability and this vulnerability, investigate this further. GitHub, we can find the POC regarding this. I can just so I'm going to use the proof of concept from rootSecDev user, and we can read this further. It becomes laggy. Manually change the IP address in the XML file, and the below comments it will be your listener IP address. Also, this also be the listener. This is listener, and spawn Python web server and spawn on that listener. So potentially we can clone this. So what I'm going to do is change the XML file and 11th. So this should be the line 1432, and this comment. So target will be this. And port, and so before this I can run the listener, and so this looks to be the somewhere where the POC Linux XML is. So we can go to the HTB and CV and open the server on 902, and I can also 10 and 9002. Perfect. So I understand that I'm in the ActiveMQ users shell, and you can get the user flag. And so at this stage I like to run the limpias. So first I can go remove the pre-made limpias before, and I can transfer this, I can elevate the shelf and run the limpias. And I think to save the time I can just use this. And server, Python server, already in use. 10 and wget and mode. So we can check the result. Let's rflag preserves the raw ANSI color codes, so we can get more output with the better readability. Olympias. So we can check this further. F container. It says like user ActiveMQ may run the following commands on broker, and so we can run the Nginx without the password, it says. Following commands on broker. So as we can use the Nginx binary file without the password as a root user, so we can also check some information. So the version is 1.18.0 and show version and version and configuration options. It looks like this, and nothing interesting at this stage. So but we can also find that we can set the configuration file using the root permission. So let's summarize what we can do. So we can control Nginx using sudo permission, and Nginx is web server, so potentially we can also be used as the file transfer. So using file transfer, we can get to the root shell. So if we look into this web dev Nginx, so the Nginx HTTP dev module is intended for file management automation via the web dev protocol, and web dev protocol is this is the set of extensions to the enables collaborative editing and file management over the internet. It's a way for users to interact with files and directories stored on remote servers, letting them perform actions like uploading, downloading, editing, and managing access. So potentially we can use this module to get to the root shell. So this module is not default, not built by default. It should be enabled with the HTTP dev module configuration parameter. So we can check the configuration parameter using this and double the width and HTTP. I think I can just use that. Configure argument and something like this. Maybe we can so this redirects the standard error to standard output 1. Let's grab that. So we can check that the with HTTP dev module is here. Here. So at this stage I can move this and I can rewrite the configuration file at this stage, and it should be this file and user root. So this explicitly tells the Nginx work. So this explicitly tells the Nginx worker process to execute as the root user. So because we are allowed to launch Nginx using sudo, the operating system grants Nginx the authority to actually do this. An event. This is Nginx boilerplate. Even if you are building the simplest web server on earth, Nginx's core architecture requires an events block to exist. We leave it completely empty, telling Nginx, just use your built-in default settings for handling connections. And then HTTP and server. So HTTP block tells Nginx we are dealing with web traffic, and the server block defines our specific virtual host, our backdoor. And backdoor will be our local host. So I like to check this with 9007. So we bind our rogue server specifically to the localhost IP 127.0.0.1. This means no one from the outside network can see our backdoor. So we chose port 9007 in case 9000 is already in use by the machine. And root So this is the critical line in this file. The root directive tells Nginx how to translate a web URL into a physical file path on the hard drive. By setting it to the absolute system root, we are turning the entire Linux file system into a web directory. If we send an HTTP request to root SSH authorized keys, Nginx maps that directly to the real file on the disk. And then location. So this location block dictates the rules for anyone accessing the root of our web server. Inside here, where we unleash web dev. So regarding the web dev, we can look into this further. So root So what we are going to add is this one, this one, this one. So we can also look into this information here. So this dev methods part. So the parameter of denies all methods processed by this module. The following methods are supported: put, delete, mk, call, copy, and move. A file uploaded with the put method is first written to a temporary file, and then the file is renamed. Starting from version and temporary files store can be put on different file systems. So for any given location, both save files and a directory holding temporary files. So we can use this temp path 1 and this one and create full only allows creating files in already existing. So setting so in case we can at this moment we can include this, but I will omit this from this example to simplify this. So dev methods, or I can also add this. If I want to add this, it should be here, HTTP part client body temp path. It should be just temp client body, like this. And location, and it is put because for the file upload, and for put path on as the example configuration file, and applications server. I think okay. So if you let me explain this code again and the crate will path on. So if you want to drop our SSH key into root SSH folder, but the root user hasn't generated any keys yet, then SSH folder doesn't exist. Without this line, the file upload would fail. Setting this to on tells Nginx to automatically build any missing directories it needs to replace. It needs to place our payload, and this which looks to be permission, setting permission. So when Nginx writes our uploaded file to the disk, it needs to know what file permissions to set. This line ensures the file is created with read-write permissions for the file owner and group, and read for everyone else. And we can transfer this file. wget wait, next. Before investigate this further, need to create this temporary folder, and so when we check this, there is something that we can test the configuration before set this. So because wait, because I'm not in the temp folder right now. Open Nginx, and this is also maybe I can just here, so I'll investigate this here further. So then I can test it successful. So we can set the configuration file 9007 unbound. Maybe we can use another one perhaps. And perfect. I think the port could be in use because I've done this in 9007 before somehow. So I think yes, it was running. I think I've done this with this before taking this, and then we can create the SSH pair. So ED25519 algorithm, and where to save here, and set an empty passphrase. Then the output will bring our private key and the public key that we are going to place this in the root user's home directory. And curl x put. So we are forcing curl to use the HTTP put method, which we can place the file with the web dev module, and data binary. So we are telling curl to read the exact raw contents of our public key file and attach it as the body of the HTTP request. And 9007 root byte keys. So place this. I think I can just curl data binary. I think it already has gone. I think there must be something that rotates. Then I think I may also need to 18 transfer again. And it was 18, and then we can SSH perfect. So my and cat ls, so we get the root shell. So I hope this, so the process was like nginx receives the request, and C, we want to write to root SSH folder and create the SSH folder if it doesn't exist, and then write our public key into authorized keys with root privileges. Thank you so much for watching this video.